The blood-red sands of Arena Maximus erupted in thunderous applause as Krazz, champion of the Draconid quadrant, raised his vibrating plasma blade toward the royal box. 7 feet of rippling muscle and iridescent scales, Krazz cut an imposing figure against the backdrop of the massive Colosseum that housed 50,000 spectators from across the galaxy. I dedicate this victory to the glory of the Galactic Federation. Krazz roared, his voice amplified through the arena's acoustic system. His defeated opponent, a Centaurian warrior, was being carried away on a medical hover stretcher, green blood pooling from a deep gash across his torso. In the Imperial box, Federation President Thalen nodded her approval, her 6 eyes blinking in sequence, a sign of respect among her species. Beside her sat the real prize, Kyle Armstrong, the human ambassador who was nothing more than a political prisoner dressed in diplomatic clothes. Armstrong leaned forward, his expression flat despite the spectacle before him. He stifled a yawn behind his hand, not bothering to hide his disinterest from the Federation officials flanking him. "Is there something unsatisfactory about our champion's performance, Ambassador Armstrong?" President Thalen asked, her translator converting her clicks and whistles into standard English. Armstrong shrugged. "I've seen better fights in Earth's underground circuits. Your champion has all the subtlety of a freight train." The arena fell silent as Krazz pointed his blade directly at Armstrong. "I challenge the human, let him back his words with blood." President Thalen's facial membranes rippled with delight. "What fortune! It seems you have been invited to participate, Ambassador." Armstrong's eyes narrowed. This wasn't coincidence, it was planned. 6 months of captivity disguised as diplomatic service had taught him the Federation's games. "And if I refuse, then the mining colony on Mars might experience technical difficulties with their oxygen generators," Thalen replied smoothly. "Diplomacy is about sacrifice, wouldn't you agree?" Armstrong stood, removing his ornate diplomatic robe to reveal the simple gray jumpsuit beneath. "Fine, but I'll need my own weapon." "Of course," Thalen gestured, and a guard approached with a weapons rack displaying an assortment of blades, staffs, and energy weapons. "Choose your fate, human." Armstrong scanned the selection before selecting a simple metal staff. The crowd murmured in disapproval at his humble choice against Krazz's legendary plasma blade. "A poor selection," Thalen observed. "Perhaps you misunderstand the gravity of your situation." "I understand perfectly," Armstrong replied, testing the staff's weight. "When does this circus start?" 20 minutes later, Armstrong stood in the arena, feeling the coarse red sand beneath his bare feet. The staff felt light in his hands, too light for serious combat, but he hadn't been given much choice. Across the arena, Krazz performed an elaborate warm-up routine, his blade cutting patterns through the air that left glowing trails of ionized particles. "People of the Federation," the announcer's voice boomed. "Today we witness a special match. The undefeated champion of the Draconid quadrant faces Earth's ambassador in a trial by combat." The crowd roared its approval as betting interfaces lit up across the stadium. The odds against Armstrong scrolled on the massive view screens, 250 to 1. Krazz finished his display and faced Armstrong, his reptilian eyes narrowing to vertical slits. "Your species has rejected Federation rule for too long, human. Today I make an example of you." Armstrong rolled his shoulders and adopted a casual stance. "Let's get this over with. I'm missing lunch." The arena's alarm sounded, signaling the start of combat. Krazz charged immediately, his 7-foot frame covering the distance with surprising speed. The plasma blade hummed through the air as he brought it down in a powerful overhead strike. Armstrong sidestepped with minimal effort, allowing the blade to hit nothing but sand, which instantly vitrified into glass from the heat. Before Krazz could recover, Armstrong tapped him lightly on the back of his knee with the staff. "Point for me?" Armstrong asked innocently. Krazz roared and spun, slashing horizontally. Again, Armstrong ducked under the attack with a bored expression. The crowd's cheering faltered, replaced by confused murmurs. "Stand and fight, coward," Krazz bellowed. Armstrong circled lazily. "I am fighting. You're just not very good at seeing it." This time, Krazz feinted left before striking right, a move that had decapitated his last 3 opponents. Armstrong read the deception easily, blocking the true attack with his staff. The plasma blade sliced through the metal, leaving Armstrong holding 2 shortened pieces. "Well, that's inconvenient," Armstrong remarked, tossing one piece aside. Krazz pressed his advantage, launching into a flurry of attacks that would have overwhelmed any normal opponent. Armstrong weaved through them, his movements economical and precise. He wasn't just avoiding the blade, he was studying Krazz's patterns. In the Imperial box, President Thalen leaned forward. "The human moves, strangely." Her military advisor nodded. "Earth rejected our initial invasion 60 years ago. We never understood how. Perhaps this display offers insight." After 5 minutes of failed attacks, Krazz's breathing grew labored. His strikes became wilder, less controlled. Armstrong hadn't even attempted to counterattack yet. "Are you done warming up?" Armstrong called out. "I was hoping for a real challenge." Krazz's scales flushed dark purple with rage. He lunged forward, overcommitting to a thrust aimed at Armstrong's heart. The human pivoted at the last moment, grabbed Krazz's extended arm, and used the alien's momentum to send him sprawling face first into the sand. The stadium went completely silent. Armstrong stood over the fallen champion, who scrambled to rise, spitting sand and blood from a cut on his lip. "How?" Krazz demanded. "No one evades my blade. Humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years," Armstrong replied. "We're very, very good at it." Krazz charged again, this time more cautiously. His blade created a defensive perimeter of light as he advanced. Armstrong waited until the last moment before dropping to the ground and sweeping Krazz's legs from under him. As the alien fell, Armstrong plucked the plasma blade from his grasp. The crowd gasped collectively. To disarm a Draconid was the ultimate insult. Armstrong examined the weapon curiously. "Interesting design, bit flashy for my taste." He deactivated it and tossed it aside, out of Krazz's reach. "Get up, we're not finished." Krazz rose, his claws extended. Without his weapon, he reverted to his species' natural fighting style, all slashing claws and powerful jaws. He lunged at Armstrong with renewed fury. This time, Armstrong didn't dodge. He met Krazz head-on, blocking a claw swipe and delivering a precise strike to the alien's throat. Krazz staggered back, choking. "Your species has a nerve cluster here," Armstrong explained, pointing to his own throat. "So does mine. Common evolutionary development." Krazz recovered and circled more cautiously. "Who are you? No diplomat fights like this." Armstrong smiled for the first time. "I'm not a diplomat. I'm a prisoner, just like you." The revelation rippled through the crowd as translation algorithms caught up. In the Imperial box, President Thalen's membranes flattened against her face, a sign of extreme displeasure. "Enough games," she commanded through the arena's communication system. "Krazz, finish this now." Krazz nodded and reached for a hidden compartment in his armor. He removed a small device and pressed it against his chest. His body convulsed as combat stimulants flooded his system, his muscles bulging and scales hardening. "Chemical enhancement," Armstrong noted. "Desperate move." Krazz attacked with twice his previous speed, his claws leaving visible distortions in the air. Armstrong's casual demeanor vanished as he was forced to defend seriously for the first time. A claw caught his jumpsuit, tearing through fabric and leaving 4 parallel cuts across his chest. Armstrong winced but maintained his guard. "Better," he acknowledged, "but still predictable." The next exchange was brutal. Krazz's drug-enhanced strength allowed him to break through Armstrong's defenses. A powerful blow sent the human flying backward, landing hard on the sand. The crowd erupted in cheers as blood soaked through Armstrong's jumpsuit. "Not so confident now, human?" Krazz advanced, his movements jerky from the stimulants. Armstrong rose slowly, one hand pressed against his bleeding side. "Actually, I'm just getting interested." He wiped blood from his mouth and reset his stance. This time when Krazz attacked, Armstrong didn't dodge or block, he countered. His fist connected with the exact spot where Draconid facial plates met softer tissue. Krazz howled as pain receptors overloaded his nervous system. Armstrong followed with a series of precise strikes targeting nerve clusters and joint weaknesses, knowledge that had cost Earth dearly to acquire during the First Contact War. Each blow landed with surgical precision, exploiting evolutionary vulnerabilities that the Federation believed were secret. In the Imperial box, the military advisor turned to President Thalen. "He knows our physiology. This is impossible." Thalen's eyes narrowed. "Unless Earth has been preparing for round 2 all this time." On the arena floor, Krazz struggled to maintain consciousness as the combat stimulants in his system competed with the pain signals from Armstrong's attacks. He swung wildly, his coordination deteriorating. Armstrong caught Krazz's arm mid-swing and applied pressure to a nerve point. The alien's arm went limp immediately. "You should know," Armstrong said quietly. "I was sent here to be caught." Before Krazz could process this information, Armstrong struck again, this time at the base of Krazz's skull. The champion collapsed to the sand, unconscious but alive. The arena exploded in a mixture of outrage and awe. No one had ever defeated Krazz, much less with such apparent ease despite sustaining injuries. Armstrong stood over his fallen opponent, breathing heavily, blood still seeping from his wounds. He looked up at the Imperial box and gave a mocking bow to President Thalen. "I believe I've won your game," he called out. "Now, shall we discuss the real reason I'm here?" Guards surrounded Armstrong immediately, energy weapons trained on him from all angles. President Thalen's voice came over the arena speakers, calm but edged with cold fury. "Take the human to Medical Bay 4. Full restraints. And wake Krazz. I want them both in my chambers when they're stable." Armstrong offered no resistance as the guards led him away. The last thing he saw before exiting the arena was the stunned faces of the spectators, many of whom were furiously accessing information terminals to place new bets on what would happen next. In Medical Bay 4, Armstrong sat quietly as automated medical drones sealed his wounds. The cuts on his chest were deeper than he'd let on during the fight, and he winced as antiseptic compounds burned in the open flesh. "Tissue damage extends to the intercostal muscles," the medical AI reported. "Recommend full regeneration cycle." "No time," Armstrong replied. "Just stop the bleeding and manage the pain." The door slid open, and a Federation security officer entered. Unlike most Federation species, this one appeared almost human, save for the silvery sheen to her skin and the lack of external ears. "I am Chief Security Officer Zella," she introduced herself. "You have created quite a problem, Ambassador, if that is even your real title." Armstrong nodded as a drone injected him with a local anesthetic. "Kyle Armstrong, Earth Special Operations." "The ambassador title was your government's idea, not ours." "And the purpose of this?" "Infiltration," Armstrong's eyes met hers directly. "To demonstrate that humans aren't as weak as you think we are, your invasion plans need reconsideration." Zella's expression didn't change, but her hand moved subtly toward her sidearm. "What invasion plans?" "The ones scheduled to launch from your military installation on Proxima Centauri B in 62 days, Armstrong replied calmly. 300 ships, 50,000 troops, targeting Earth's major cities simultaneously. This time, Zella couldn't hide her shock. "How could you possibly know that?" Armstrong smiled thinly. "The same way I knew exactly how to take down your champion. We've been studying you for decades." Another door opened and medical drones brought in Krazz on a hover stretcher. The champion was conscious but clearly in pain, his scales dulled to a sickly gray. The stimulants damaged his cardiovascular system, the medical AI reported. He requires immediate treatment. Armstrong glanced at Krazz. You should listen to the AI. Those combat drugs will kill you if not neutralized properly. Krazz's eyes fixed on Armstrong with pure hatred. How did you defeat me? I am unbeatable in the arena. No one is unbeatable, Armstrong replied. Especially when their opponent knows more about their physiology than they do. Before Krazz could respond, President Thalen entered the medical bay, flanked by additional guards. She dismissed the medical drones with a gesture and approached Armstrong. You have caused quite a disruption, human, she said. Our citizens are questioning how a supposedly inferior species could so easily defeat our champion. Armstrong shrugged, then winced as the movement pulled at his freshly sealed wounds. Perhaps you should question your assumptions about humanity's inferiority. Thalen's multiple eyes focused on him intently. What do you want, Armstrong? Why this elaborate performance? To deliver a message, Armstrong replied. Earth knows about your invasion plans, and we're prepared to respond with force that will make your previous defeat seem merciful by comparison. Thalen's translator remained silent for several seconds as she processed his words. You're bluffing. Earth has no defensive capability that could withstand our fleet. Armstrong laughed, triggering a fresh wave of pain from his wounds. We allowed your scouts to see exactly what we wanted them to see. Did you really think we've spent the last 60 years since first contact doing nothing? From his position on the stretcher, Krazz growled. He lies. Humans are physically weak. I only lost because of trickery. Armstrong turned to the fallen champion. No, you lost because you fought like your training taught you, never adapting. That's the fundamental difference between our species. Humans adapt. We evolve our strategies. We learn. President Thalen moved closer, her voice lowered. If what you say is true, why come here? Why risk capture to deliver this message when diplomatic channels exist? Because your military leaders have blocked all diplomatic warnings, Armstrong explained. They've convinced you that Earth is ripe for conquest. I needed to demonstrate publicly and undeniably that their assessment is wrong. Thalen considered this. And the information about our launch from Proxima Centauri. Just one of many secrets we've uncovered, Armstrong said. We also know about the weapon testing on Europa, the infiltration units on Mars, and the genetic sampling program you've been running on abducted humans. With each revelation, Thalen's facial membranes tightened further. She turned to Zella. Verify these claims immediately. While Zella stepped aside to communicate with Federation intelligence, Krazz struggled to sit up on his stretcher. Give me another chance to fight him, President Thalen. I will not fail a second time. Thalen ignored him, focusing on Armstrong. If this remains as significant if your information is accurate, what does Earth propose? A genuine alliance, Armstrong replied. Not the puppet relationship you've tried to establish. Earth joins the Federation as an equal member with full voting rights and protection. Impossible, Thalen dismissed. New species must prove their worth through centuries of service. That policy applies to species you've conquered, Armstrong countered. Earth remains unconquered, and now you know why. We're offering you the chance to avoid a war you might not win, Zeller returned, her expression grave. President, I have confirmation. The humans' information about Proxima Centauri is accurate. Our security has been compromised. The medical bay fell silent. Even Krazz stopped his struggles to listen. How deep does this infiltration go? Thalen finally asked. Armstrong met her gaze steadily. Deep enough that starting a war with Earth would be suicide for your administration, both politically and literally. President Thalen's inner eyelids closed, briefly a sign of deep calculation among her species. You've made your point effectively, Armstrong, perhaps too effectively. The Federation Council will need to reconsider its position on Earth. That's all we ask, Armstrong said. A fair hearing and recognition of our sovereignty. Thalen turned to leave, then paused. The spectacle you created today cannot be undone. Billions across the Federation witnessed a human defeating our greatest champion. There will be consequences. Armstrong nodded. I'm counting on it. Fear is a poor foundation for respect, but it's a start. After Thalen and her entourage departed, leaving guards posted outside, Krazz finally managed to sit up fully on his stretcher. The medical drones had administered counter-agents to the combat stimulants, and his color was gradually improving. "You humiliated me before the entire Federation," he said, his voice surprisingly calm. Armstrong examined his own bandaged wounds. "That wasn't my goal. You were just the most visible symbol of Federation military might, and now I am the symbol of its failure." Krazz's claws dug into the padding of his stretcher. "My 7-year undefeated record destroyed." "Records are made to be broken," Armstrong replied. "Besides, you fought well. Those stimulants nearly gave you the edge." Krazz's vertical pupils dilated slightly. "You knew I would use them. We've studied the chemical profiles of every combat enhancement used in the arenas. Your blood work would have shown traces even before today's fight." Armstrong stretched cautiously, testing his injuries. "Federation champions have been doping for decades. It's practically institutionalized. And humans don't enhance their warriors," Krazz asked skeptically. Armstrong's expression darkened. "We tried that route. The results were problematic. Now we focus on training and strategy rather than chemical shortcuts." A tense silence fell between them, broken only by the soft hum of medical equipment. Finally, Krazz spoke again. "Teach me." Armstrong blinked in surprise. "What? Teach me how you fought, how you predicted my movements." Krazz's request sounded physically painful for him to articulate. "I want to understand." Armstrong studied the alien champion thoughtfully. This wasn't part of his mission parameters, but improvisation had always been his strength. "Why should I?" "You'll just use it against other humans if the invasion proceeds. Because if your diplomatic gambit fails, you'll need allies within the Federation," Krazz replied pragmatically. "And I need to rebuild my reputation." Before Armstrong could respond, the door slid open again. Zella entered, this time alone. "President Thalen has convened an emergency session of the Security Council," she announced. "You are both required to attend." Armstrong stood carefully, mindful of his injuries. "Both of us, why Krazz?" "The champion's perspective is considered valuable," Zella explained, though her tone suggested she disagreed with the decision. "And there is another matter. Betting systems across the Federation have registered an unusual pattern. It seems someone placed enormous wagers on your victory, Armstrong." Armstrong maintained a neutral expression. "The odds were 250 to 1, I believe. Someone made a fortune." "Several fortunes," Zella corrected. "And the accounts trace back to shell corporations with ties to Earth intelligence operations." Krazz made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Your people bet on your victory. That shows either remarkable confidence or foolishness." "It shows advanced planning," Armstrong corrected. "And it just transferred approximately 8% of the Federation's liquid currency reserves to Earth-controlled accounts." Zella's silvery skin flushed darker. "You attacked our economy as well." "Not attacked," Armstrong clarified. "Leveraged. Those funds will be used to establish Earth's contribution to Federation development projects once our membership is approved. Consider it a good faith deposit." Krazz managed to stand from his stretcher, wobbling slightly as he found his balance. "Humans fight on multiple fronts simultaneously. Interesting strategy." The Security Council chamber was a vast amphitheater with representatives from 37 species arranged in concentric rings. Armstrong noted that the human seat, empty for 60 years, remained in place near the outer ring. A small gesture of recognition that Earth had never formally surrendered its provisional membership. President Thalen occupied the central podium, her image projected onto massive screens around the chamber. This emergency session will address the security breach revealed by the human Kyle Armstrong and its implications for Federation-Earth relations. Armstrong stood in the witness circle, aware that every word and gesture was being analyzed by billions across the galaxy. Krazz stood in a separate circle, his posture rigid despite his injuries. Ambassador, or rather, Operative Armstrong, Thalen began, please explain to the Council exactly how Earth obtained classified information about Federation military operations. Armstrong had prepared for this question. Earth has developed technologies that allow us to monitor quantum communications across distances previously thought impossible. We've been listening to your military channels for years. A ripple of disbelief moved through the Council. A representative of the Arcturian Collective, renowned for their expertise in quantum physics, rose to object. Such technology violates fundamental principles of quantum mechanics. It cannot exist, Armstrong smiled. Just as a human couldn't possibly defeat a Draconid champion in combat. The Arcturian had no response to that. Thalen redirected the conversation. Whether through technology or espionage, the fact remains that Earth has acquired sensitive information. The planned operation against Earth must be considered compromised and is hereby suspended pending further review. Several military representatives began to protest, but Thalen silenced them with a gesture. We have also confirmed that financial systems throughout the Federation have been manipulated through betting on today's arena combat, resulting in a significant transfer of wealth to Earth-controlled entities. This announcement caused an even greater uproar. Economic warfare was considered more serious than military action in many Federation cultures. Armstrong waited for the noise to subside before speaking. Earth did not initiate hostilities. We merely demonstrated our capabilities in response to your planned invasion. The funds transferred will be fully accounted for and used within Federation economic systems. A Syrian delegate, their floating gas-filled body pulsing with agitation, addressed Armstrong directly. What does Earth want from this confrontation? Recognition, Armstrong replied simply. Earth wants full membership in the Federation with all associated rights and protections. We want trade agreements, cultural exchange, and scientific collaboration. But most importantly, we want respect. Respect is earned, not demanded, the Syrian countered. Krazz, who had remained silent until now, surprised everyone by speaking. The human has earned my respect today. He defeated me fairly, despite my advantages. He gestured to the medical patches still visible on his scales, evidence of the combat stimulants being purged from his system. The admission from the Federation's champion created a buzz throughout the chamber. President Thalen seized the moment. I propose the following resolution. All military actions against Earth will be immediately and permanently suspended. Earth will be granted provisional full membership in the Federation for a probationary period of 5 standard years. During this time, Earth will disclose the full extent of its surveillance capabilities and cease all economic operations against Federation interests. Armstrong knew this was as good an offer as he could expect. Earth accepts these terms with one addition, a joint Human Federation scientific commission to explore technological exchange. Thalen considered this. Acceptable, provided that military applications require mutual approval. Agreed, Armstrong said, knowing that many technologies could serve both peaceful and military purposes. The distinction would provide room for negotiation in the future. The vote was closer than Armstrong had hoped. 23 species in favor, 14 against, but the resolution passed. Earth would join the Federation not as a conquered world but as a partner. As the Council dispersed, Krazz approached Armstrong. You came here knowing you would fight in the arena, he stated. It wasn't chance. Armstrong nodded. Our intelligence indicated that a public demonstration would be more effective than private diplomacy. Federation culture respects strength. And you chose me specifically, Krazz continued. Why? Because you're the best, Armstrong said simply. Defeating anyone else wouldn't have made the same point. Krazz's scales rippled in what Armstrong had learned was a sign of grudging acceptance. Your offer to teach me your fighting methods was that sincere? Armstrong considered the question carefully. Sharing human combat techniques could potentially be used against Earth if relations deteriorated again, but it could also build a valuable alliance. Yes, he finally answered. Cultural exchange works both ways. I'll teach you what I know and you can teach me Draconid techniques. Agreed, Krazz said, extending his clawed hand in an approximation of a human handshake, a gesture he must have studied. Armstrong accepted the handshake, mindful of the sharp edges of Krazz's scales. First lesson, combat isn't about dominating your opponent, it's about understanding them. A strange philosophy for a warrior, Krazz observed. Humans aren't just warriors, Armstrong replied. We're survivors. We adapt. It's what makes us dangerous and valuable as allies. 6 months later, the Earth delegation arrived at Federation headquarters on Tau Ceti E for the formal membership ceremony. Armstrong, now officially recognized as Earth Security Liaison, stood beside the actual Earth ambassador, watching as the human flag was raised alongside those of the other member species. "You know," the ambassador whispered, "when we sent you on this mission, the odds of success were calculated at less than 20%. Armstrong smiled, his gaze finding Krazz among the honor guard. The Draconid champion, now an unlikely ally and student of human martial arts, gave an almost imperceptible nod. "Sometimes," Armstrong replied, "you have to take risks to change the game. Earth spent 60 years preparing for another war with the Federation. Now we're building something better." "And if it doesn't work out?" the ambassador asked. Armstrong watched as President Thalen approached the podium to formally welcome Earth to the galactic community. "Then we've bought ourselves time and knowledge. Either way, humanity's future is among the stars as equals, not subjects." As the ceremony concluded, Armstrong reflected on the arena battle that had changed the course of human Federation relations. Sometimes the greatest victories came not from overwhelming force, but from forcing your opponent to reassess their assumptions. Earth had been underestimated for the last time. In the reception that followed, Krazz found Armstrong near the observation deck overlooking the sweeping vistas of the Federation capital. "The training sessions have been enlightening," the Draconid said. "Your human methods are unorthodox but effective." "High praise coming from you," Armstrong replied, raising a glass of iridescent Federation ceremonial wine. Krazz's expression turned serious. "There are still those within the military who view Earth as a threat to be eliminated rather than an ally to be embraced. Your demonstration in the arena convinced many, but not all." "I expected as much," Armstrong said. "Change doesn't happen overnight, especially for species who measure their lifespans in centuries. Be vigilant," Krazz warned. "And perhaps consider a rematch in the arena, this time as a friendly exhibition. It would reinforce the new relationship between our peoples." Armstrong laughed. "Only if you promise not to use those stimulants again. My ribs took weeks to heal properly." For the first time, Krazz's face formed what Armstrong recognized as a smile, a gesture the Draconid had been practicing as part of his study of human expressions. "No enhancements," Krazz promised. "Just skill against skill, although I have been studying your techniques carefully." "I'm counting on it," Armstrong replied. "A good challenge is what keeps us sharp." As the twin suns of Tau Ceti set beyond the crystalline spires of the capital, Armstrong felt a cautious optimism. Earth's path forward would not be easy, but they had earned their place among the stars not through submission, but through demonstrating that humanity could not be underestimated. The next time a blade was raised in the arena, it would be in friendship rather than conquest. And if the Federation ever forgot the lesson they had learned, Earth would be ready to remind them that appearances could be deceiving, and that sometimes the most dangerous opponent was the one who yawned and asked for a real challenge.